groups say they're elated at the decision by the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan to appoint Michelle Phillips as the CEO at Transnet and Nosipho Maphumo as Chief Financial Officer. Phillips had been acting in the position since the resignation of Portia Derby late last year. As you know, Transnet's been in all sorts of trouble, battling to keep its railway services running to move coal and mining products from the interior of the country to the coast. As a result, thousands of trucks have been queued for hours and days on the road to Richards Bay to offload their coal at the terminal there. Professor Havenga is a macro-logistician at the Industrial Engineering Department at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor, good afternoon to you. I know you've been watching this really very closely. Is Michelle Phillips the right person for this job?
Without a doubt. This is the best news I've heard in a while. I really was so relieved that it finally came to this point. But at the same time, I have to say that since July last year, the minister has actually done some really interesting things. He's appointed a great board. They're very competent. He finally got rid of the previous management, which was really doing a lot of damage to the company. They've produced a turnaround plan. At the same time, the president has promised us a logistics roadmap. The cabinet has approved it, and the National Logistic Crisis Committee is up and running. A lot of positive things has happened from where I would say we were very close to a logistics blackout. I looked at figures just now. Again, I've got my own observatory in terms of road and rail, in rail and ports and so on. We came very close to a complete blackout in logistics. And what Michelle and her team has done is absolutely fantastic. I looked at the numbers again. The ports has improved so much. She's done such wonderful and good work. I've been watching her closely, and she's really done it. But you know, the railway's throughput for 2 consecutive weeks over the last 2 weeks has been the best than it's been in the last year. The first time in a year that we had 2 consecutive weeks of improvement. So it's going well. I'm thinking of that Sasol deal that was signed, that was announced yesterday. I'm thinking of Business South Africa's serious approval of this. And finally, I know many people in that business. I really know many. And the change in culture is palpable. That toxic culture is very quickly being taken away by great leadership. So this is fantastic. This is the best news ever.
So you say she's made a lot of progress. What needs to be the next priority? And I've heard already people say that what really needs to happen is to concentrate, put all the resources on sorting out, getting coal, getting mining products from the interior of the country through the railways and to the ports, because that's what's really costing the country R1 billion a day.
Exactly. But here comes a very important point, a critical point in this bill. If you think about everybody that's done their bit, the minister that's done his bit, even a Minister of Transport who took this roadmap to Cabinet and got it approved, and Business South Africa that through the National Logistics Crisis Committee did so much hard work to get this done. There is sad news as well that I can tell you today, I'm quite sure of, and that is it was so broken, the system, and they're doing so well. It cannot be saved in its current form. It's actually impossible. It's impossible. Now, I can give you an idea. They're going to get to 151 million tons this year. If the turnaround wasn't done, they probably would have turned it 139 million tons. They need about 180 million tons to actually, on their own, get there. So where are we now? We're at the point where all of South Africa have to bring their part, and they are. I mean, the business really is, and they're doing it, but sadly, I now have to turn to the Treasury and say, you cannot turn on Transnet again with nothing. So, and I've seen this. It's impossible to do. So this is the best kept public secret that there is. Transnet will need a bailout. There's no doubt about it. And if I talk about this bailout, I actually can ring-fence it very specifically. And I'm saying what the government should do is take over the ring-fence state capture debt. Because you cannot expect current management to stand in for that. It's actually the shareholder that caused that problem. And if government were to take over the state capture debt, if we assist Transnet in restructuring the balance sheet and replace some of their most expensive debt with much cheaper debt, and all of that is really possible. If the Treasury comes to the party, if the Treasury assists with the process that is required for the debt restructuring, and if the Treasury would assist with taking over the state capture debt, this team that we have now and the announcements that's bound to follow soon, which is the appointment of the chief of the railway. I think that's around the corner. In the next few days, we'll probably hear that. This team can do it, but we have to give them something to work with. Sadly, that there's no other way out of it.
I mean, the point you're getting to really is money, and it's very difficult for any kind of organisation to do anything when they have huge debt. Eskom has exactly the same problem. There was no more money for Transnet in the budget, and I presume that's what you're pointing to. You suggest that the Finance Minister got that wrong?
Without a doubt, and I think the numbers that Transnet is asking for is very little. And I've said it before, if we started the correct process maybe 18 months to 2 years ago, maybe even a year ago, we might have been able to do this without a bail. And here I talk about sovereign guarantees. Here I talk about low interest debt, restructuring balance sheet, doing that type of work. And that's the type of work that Porsche didn't want to do, because he didn't want Treasury to look over his shoulder. If we started that a year ago, maybe we could have made this without the bailout. But I really don't call it a bailout. I talk about 50 to 70 billion rand. That's maximum required to pay off, and I'm very specific about it, state capture debt. So it's debt that actually is non-productive. Assets were bought that actually has no contribution towards the company. And you can imagine if you have 150 billion debt pile, and half of that money was used for nothing, to buy nothing. How difficult it would be for the new management that you've now appointed to actually turn that company around. It's more or less impossible. More or less nobody can do that.
You talk about the private sector, business of course talking about this in the last sort of 12 hours. What role is the private sector now playing? And it seems to me that the private sector is actually playing a bigger role. We know that there's going to be a private player that will run part of Pier 2, or most of Pier 2 in Durban, at the port there. Are they going to start playing a bigger role on the railway network as well?
Without a doubt. I think that the other thing that is quite surprising to me is that Transnet has made great progress in separating infrastructure from operations. The only reason why they haven't actually switched it on yet, and they will probably switch it on in April or May, or soon after, is the fact because they needed a new financial year, because of enterprise resource systems, etc. I've seen the work that they've done, and they've done really good work. So I think we are close to being able to sell slots in a more proper way than the Transnet tried earlier to the private sector and run private sector trains. We are much closer than we've ever been. But once again, now this is the interesting thing. In order to enable that, we will need to fix the network. And you can't fix the network with nothing. So I've got no idea how government expect Transnet to actually fix the network before they sell it. And then I can't expect private sector operators to actually buy slots without some sort of a guarantee that the slots that they buy will be working. So we are very close. All the systems and everything is in place. I think we can have open access with private sector rail operators very, very soon. Now, I also know some of the people that will bid for those slots. We actually have very good rail operators in South Africa. Not everybody knows it, but it's people in South Africa, quite a few companies that actually operate trains all over Africa. And they do it very well. So some of them has already started to buy rolling stock. I think what we would need is more certainty in the market in order for them to secure finance to buy more rolling stock. But some of them already began to secure rolling stock. So I think we've got much more closer than what people think.
There's a lot going on here. I mean, you seem to be very optimistic, Professor Havenga. Obviously, the main issue is going to be the money. Isn't the issue always the money? If we don't get the money, would that stop all of this progress from being made and continue to cost the country an absolute fortune every day? There's one very specific thing that will happen. I probably will get a lot of people getting cross with me with this, but I can make a prediction around that. If government really, really sticks to where they are currently, if the Minister of Finance, and I understand the Minister of Finance approach, his cautious, fiscal, responsible approach is understandable, especially since what's happened with previous state-owned enterprises. But this is not the airways. This is the backbone of our economy. If they were not to give the money, then I can only see one thing happening, and that is Transnet will be put into curatorship, into business rescue, and all sorts of messy things is going to happen. And eventually we'll get to the same point on the other side, but with a lot of pain, a lot of uncomfortableness,
a lot of difficulty. It will take more time to get open access. You know, a lot of these things will have to be negotiated with the curator and the business rescue partner. And all of that can actually, right now, be avoided because we have a good team in place. But there's no other option. I mean, that is what's going to happen. No matter how hard Michelle and her team works, they cannot save this company to the point where I can say they're not going to need some sort of a bailout a few months down the line.
Professor Jan Havenga, thank you. A macro logistician in the Industrial Engineering Department at the University of Stellenbosch. Really appreciate the time, sir.